All right, good. We're starting at angular topology,
Mhm.
which is
Oh.
on page 77. Just making huge progress. And after you left last week, we played a good portion of the biotensegrity video that Richard sent, and then I went out. We didn't finish it. We ended the call early. Well, we ended the call at the appropriate time. And then I found another one on biotensegrity that was pretty cool. Did you get a chance to look at those?
Not at the moment.
I gotta tell you
Well,
that. Go ahead.
Yeah, until the baby is right now. The
Yeah.
baby's at my house for 2 weeks, so I've got
fun.
2, 3. Yes, it's really fun. So I
Yeah.
got the 2 a.m. up to 2 a.m., 3 a.m. duties, so that my daughter and the and the husband can sleep. Then they take it on after that.
Yeah.
So it's been hands full.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I'll tell you that there seems to be two different worlds about reality, and the concepts about the biotensegrity were really profound in terms of how tensegrity, or the applicable, about how tensegrity, when the way it's applied, actually conserves energy. It gets the most done with the least amount of energy. That was the thing that impressed me, Richard, with what I learned on those things.
Yeah. What also impressed me is, first of all, again, realizing who the two presenters were. The first one was Stephen Levin, and the one you found is Tom Myers. And I've heard one particular person on the Trim Tab group often talk about Tom Myers and his work in a physiotherapy type of way, personal training way. But I was really taken by the second one, and it's shorter. But he really did, in my mind, a really nice job of showing the comparison between a compression understanding of a system, or in this case, a body skeleton and muscles, and the tensegrity or the tension version. And how on the latter, which we don't really fully understand, is that the skeletal system, the bones, are not touching, and they're basically floating. And as one of our discussions this morning in another group, sort of, and floating basically in water, because since we're made up mostly of water. And it gives you just a totally different perception of how the bones and everything sort of fit together. And they don't fit together like a building block sort of tower. Which that's the mechanics of something. So really exciting. I would love to have had that 10-minute sort of video to show students, to sort of get them saying, "Oh, yeah, start thinking differently."
Yeah, when I was a kid, it was the hip bone connected to the thigh bone,
Yeah.
and the thigh bone connected to and no, there is an alignment. The hip bone doesn't exist without the backbone and the thigh bone. I mean, they're in a system and they interrelate. And the hip bone wouldn't be a hip bone without the system. It is mind-boggling. It's a completely different. It's like the different this kind of where you reductionism is just such a farce. It's just, yeah, I can see some benefits of reductionism. It's really nice to know how does the kneecap work? We want to make sure the kneecap is working in relationship to the tibia and the thigh and all those. But that is so reductionist, so specific that the miracle of the body gets lost. And it's kind of cool because you don't have to think about how I don't want to call it complexity, the interrelationships of things. It just boggles my mind. And I can see you're as excited about it as I am. I mean, it just, when I saw that little hip thing going like this,
Mm.
holy crap. It's like everything is suspended. Energy is suspended in this system and it works together. Oh, it's mind-boggling. So honestly, if you get a chance to look at those videos, Anne, it is completely different idea of the universe and how it works.
I definitely will, because I've been going back and throwing things at my science people, including my engineers, because the other day I was talking to my sister, who's a civil engineer by qualification, and another one of my science staff, and I was talking to them about the torus. The other one is a biomedical degree holder, right? So I'm
Yeah.
talking about the torus, and they'd not heard of torus. Okay, so there I am explaining the torus at the level of the universe and galaxies and black holes, and then down to Earth and hurricanes. And that's the first time they're hearing things like that, you know. And for me, it's like I was trying to explain to them the universal, principles and so on, universal laws of the world and principles. So now I'm gonna throw biotensegrity at them. This whole body thing, I love it. Absolutely.
Well,
and
let me tell you a quick story, and I hope it doesn't happen to you, Anne.
should I turn on the recording?
Okay.
This is
Yeah.
let's do it because these stories are so powerful. Here we go. Pause. What am I doing? Maybe we already are recording. We are recording.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and keep going.
Well, what I was going to say is that when I sort of got into the Bucky systems and the idea that there's a common organizing framework like a tetrahedron, and that you could strip knowledge off of that framework and reload it with knowledge from another discipline. So you could sort of say my discipline of social work is grounded to the same, minimum framework as an engineer and a doctor or whatever. And so we would end up with the notion of manifest diversity sitting on a common sort of infrastructure. And so anyway, I was flying to London. It's an overnight flight from Calgary, and I happened to be sitting beside an engineer. And so we got into a conversation. Maybe we had a couple of drinks, I don't know. But I started to say that I think I can understand engineering from my new discoveries. And and he was quite offended by it. And so I actually pressed it a little bit, and I kept trying to explain to him why I thought I could understand a minimum 4, if you want, uh, nature of engineering. Well, I pushed him to the extent that he turned to me and he said, "I'm a martial arts artist, and I could take you out in a second for trying to tell me you know something about my discipline." And as he said that, he actually went into the motion and he put his arms around my neck to sort of say that he could squeeze
Yeah.
the life out of me. Well, by the time we got to London, we actually were, in a sense, in a dialogue and having a meeting of minds, and we shook hands and said, nice visiting over the pole. But that was really funny because he was so convinced that it was impossible for me to have any sensible understanding of his discipline. And
Richard, when did that happen? How long ago was that?
This was 20 years ago or more. And it would probably be in the early 90s. And and then I had another one where just a minute here.
That must have scared the life out of you.
Yeah, it was really funny. I've had this model, and I used it in my classes, And one of my students, after he graduated and become a private sort of healing, helping counselor, he would put that model on his office coffee table, and he would never refer to it unless a patient or a client referred to it. So one time he'd got a referral from a corporation who was having a lot of trouble with one of their professionals who was having alcohol problems and addiction problems and behavior problems. So they sent him to a psychiatrist, and that didn't help. So the next time they sent him somewhere, they sent him to a psychologist, and that didn't help. And then they finally are about to give up on him, so they sent him to a social worker. Well, that was a low person on the totem pole as far as the client was concerned. So he walks into the office with a huge chip on his shoulder, and he's an engineer background, and like he does not want to see a social worker. And then he comes in and he sees this thing on the coffee table and he says, "What's that?" and and the counselor said, "Well, it's something that helps me, work with people and so forth." He says, "Well, you can't understand that. I know what that is. And that's an engineering model. And it's impossible for you to know anything about engineering. And so you shouldn't have that thing on your desk." Um, so that allowed the counselor to say, "Oh, you know something about that? Well, yeah."
Explain it to me.
So start talking to me. And so they talked through the model like a talking stick, because then the conflict disappeared.
Yeah.
And by the end of the
Wow.
session, the fellow was, tried to storm out, but he stopped at the door, the exit door, and did a doorknob sort of communication like is common in our work. And he turned around to the counselor and he said, "You weren't bad. I might come back." And it
Great.
was the model that did all the work, so to speak. And that's what excited me about seeing that little 10-minute version by Tom Myers, that if you could put that in front of a group of students and just get them sort of experiencing it and maybe talking about it, I think you would get them excited about, oh, this is different than something else. And even as you say, in front of teachers who have a certain kind of background, and to have them sort of experience that little 10 minutes. Anyway,
Yeah. Actually, I can get it from my engineer, who is teaching makerspace, right, in our school, and he's got students building that kind of structures, with the string, and it's like hanging in the air. It doesn't really, yeah. So I saw it in the last time when we went down this path together, and then I was so excited when I saw it in our makerspace that the kids made it. So yeah, but you're right. I should have a few of them hanging around the school somewhere, and just to help parents get past whatever is in the textbooks, and that the kids have to have new knowledge, that kind of thing, and we're taking them beyond. So yeah, thank you. I think I'll do that. And then also whether the rest of my teachers are familiar with something like that, and even I think we can also find art that plays with this. So there's art, but then also have to find actual structures, real structures, that like you're using it for real and not for like art purpose, right? You want to get to the science people, you got to get to the practical side. But yeah, I'm going to look into that. Thank you.
Well, I gotta here's the tensegrity structure thing. I hope you get. It'd be great if you could get the tetrahedron thing that Richard has, and you could get somebody mad enough they want to stomp on it to try and break it, and it just collapsed down and it's popped back up again. Really, that is so amazing, because you mentioned the torus at the beginning of this, and the torus is critical because it helps understand. It's kind of like the Planck unit. It's like when energy exists, it exists this way. But And the problem is that energy never exists outside of a system. There's always another torus, and then they interrelate. And these structures, this tensegrity, how this energy relates is absolutely the mystery. It's mind-boggling. This thing right here, it's 19 minutes long, but wow, it actually was mind-blowing. I was surprised. Richard, you were smiling as you were talking about it. It blew my mind too, because I thought, wow, it's an interrelationship. It's not a knee bone. It's not a thigh bone connected to the hip bone. It's like that thigh wouldn't even work if the other thigh, the other hip, and the backbone weren't there. It all interrelates. It's mind-boggling. So I think the idea of having those structures around and challenging people with them, and especially if they're dynamic structures that'll collapse and you get a cube octahedron and let people screw around with that and do a jitterbug. That would be great stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing would be cool is drawing a line and then having a microscope there, just a simple thing like that with a microscope there, like parents touring around the school, right? And then for them to look down and it's all dots and it's not even joined and it's not straight, Yeah, just a simple thing like that, just to open up because it's really, really tough, because whatever we're doing is so different that people do make assumptions about our school, yeah. But anyway, yeah, this is really, really cool. I'm going to think about putting some of these things up, Yeah, so I'm also going to add it into I'm just instructing my people to add it into a meeting with the heads this coming Thursday.
Wonderful.
Yeah. The other one, when you mentioned, stomping on it, I had that experience in a room full of 30 people in a national conference. And I was the guest sort of speaker, but we were in a circle. And I had the same model, and I was passing it around and asking people to just communicate with it, or does it communicate anything to you? And it so happened that I had it pulled apart just enough that when it got around to one person, for some reason, he was really annoyed with this whole exercise. He really didn't like it. And so I said to him, so does the model communicate anything to you? And he says, "Are you damn right it does." And he says it communicates that I dislike it. And he actually put it on the floor and stomped on it.
Yeah.
Well, the rest of the audience was horrified, because here's somebody sort of insulting the guest speaker. And he took his foot off, because I think he was surprised that he even did that. He took his foot off and the damn thing popped back up into its original shape.
Yeah.
And everybody was aghast, but they were all sort of relieved that my model wasn't sort of crushed and
Survived. That it
destroyed.
survived. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
The tetrahedron.
Yeah, let me see. I've got something in front of me here. Well, I guess we can go ahead and get started. It's Saturday. It's the 11th or Sunday, depending on where you are. Where I am, it's the 11th of January. Could be the 12th, I suppose. And uh, wow, 27 pages. So let's get started. We've kind of expressed some excitement already, but Anne, how are you feeling, and what do you anticipate getting out of today?
Whatever comes our way, which is quite normal. Like we didn't start off talking about biotensegrity last week, right? So even and so thank you for bringing that in. I think it was Richard who did that, right? Yeah. So anything can come our way, so bring it on. I just want to say that there was a reason why I asked you what year it happened with the engineer on the plane, because I think it was in the 90s that I was introduced to Bucky, right? But very far off, and all because I chose to go for training with the top, speakers, trainers in the world, right? Because we do have access to that in Malaysia. Some people might might steer away from that. Sorry, my lunch is here. Thanks. We are over lunch, you know, the meeting. So as the pizza comes in hot, so that's why it's out here. Otherwise I can eat something else later. But anyway, so when I started going into you know, this Robert Kiyosaki's training and Blair Singer's training, Kelly Ritchie and a few other of his friends, a lot of Baki comes up, because I think back then quite a number of the training that people went to at that time, even the trainers themselves, they went to training that had the, like Money in You, that had you know, such a strong influence from Bucky Fuller, right? And also Landmark and so on and so forth. So when we went to them, okay, this was really thrown at us, you know, like what is that? Unity. Is it unity? Unity is plural. At the max, at the minimum of 2, that kind of,
Yeah.
so that was thrown at us so much. I'm like, what in the world is that? And so on. So the reason I asked is that at that time, those of us who started going into training and to learn more, we were introduced to Baki. But over this side of the world is really, really, literally, not a lot of people till today. Not a lot of people have heard of it. So back, I guess, during your time, Richard, it was similar to what I was facing, but then I think today more and more people are more aware of Baki, yes? Yeah, so it is a shock for me when I meet people who have actually heard of Baki or even following it, you know, like really understanding his philosophy. And then when you dig a little bit, the background is that these people work closely with Blair Singer, you know, who's part of Robert Kiyosaki's group, and he back then was training us on a lot of Baki's philosophies and quotes from him and so on. So anyway, and of course Kelly, right? Kelly back then really spent a lot of time speaking like that, and we were like trying to catch up with it.
Right.
So that's you know, the reason why I asked. And so now for us to be able to talk like this, it took me so that the lag time is almost 30 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, so
one other, talking about that 30 years ago, I was in India for 6 months in 1994. And so I would often almost like brag that I know something about this Bucky Fuller, and somehow bring it into a conversation wherever I could. Well, I was out for dinner with my hosts in Bangalore, India, and they had invited another couple to come along to the dinner to meet me and for me to meet them. And so somewhere in the dinner, I brought up Bucky Fuller, sort of like, I know something that maybe you don't know, kind of message. And the other guest, the husband of the other couple, he kind of looked at me and he said, well, actually, I do know something about Bucky Fuller. I'm an architect, and I was on the project that built the new airport in Delhi, and I worked with his company. So, boy, did that ever put me in my place, sort of like. It was
Very cool.
I was trying to one up ship them, and he certainly put me in my proper place.
Yeah. And just maybe to add to that, yeah, I think the one realization I got out of this whole journey is that, you know, when I pick up some stuff, I just start talking about it, you know, even if I don't know much about it, I start talking about it. And I realize that's what has gotten me to this point where, you know, if you, just because you don't know and you don't talk about it, you're never ever going to learn much about it, right? So, but sometimes if you start talking about it, one is that you have a better understanding, and then somehow you have to figure out how to make it clear to somebody else who have no clue what it is. And then the third one is that it kind of leads you down a journey. I wouldn't even say it's a path, but it's a journey where you get connected to, you know. And so I that's one of the realizations I've had. So I would never, never, ever, just because I know a little bit about something, not to talk to someone about it, and I would just go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, every time, and just so you know, all the discussions that we have, whenever I have a chance that something pops up, I'll be sharing. You know, what Steve says, what Richard says, what Joe says, what Manu says, what Wayne says, and Susan. Oh my God, it's crazy. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Richard, yeah, how do you feel? And what is,
Well,
yeah.
I feel energized, and it's in a kind of a negative context, where certainly in this part of the world, where we see Los Angeles burning down in one
Mm.
part of the country, and on the other side of the country, we see wicked snowstorms that are hitting parts of the U.S. that don't normally get snow. And of course, in the middle of all that is the politics of a transition that's going to kick in a new or a repeat era. So yeah, so to have all that kind of negativity around you, it's a real delight to be able to um, take a break from it, so to speak, um, and 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 be part of these dialogues. But I think the other thing, that these dialogues also, for me anyway, are never divorced from that bigger picture that's happening around us. There's always a connection. There's something that is practical, if you want, even for me just personally, um, or maybe something gets passed on from somebody else over to me, or me over to you, and yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to these kinds of dialogues. Steve, how are you
Yeah.
feeling, and
Well, I'm real
what's your
excited.
expectations?
I'm real excited. I've already shared some of that. This understanding, the sensibility about how the universe works and how everything is so interrelated. It's a miracle, and actually builds my self-worth.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had been a kid and realized that I was interrelated and part of a system, and no matter what I thought or how I felt, I think it's exciting just to wake up and be part of what's going on and know I'm part of it. And I'm an essential part because I get to do whatever I want to do about it. You know, I can do nothing about it or I can do something about it. I just am excited. And tonight, we're going through, or today, we're going through angular topology. I have had a huge experience of, I'm looking forward to this because I've had a huge experience of angular momentum. And um, and I don't want to take away from what's going on here, because I won't, because what's going to be here is here. But this torus is spinning, and angular momentum is what makes everything slightly different. It's that angular momentum. I like to think of it like at a pool table. That pool ball goes down and hits, and if that ball has the right spin on it, it'll hit the one ball in the one slot, then it'll move over and set up for its next shot. If you know how to spin it just right, everything is synchronous. And the universe does that by itself. And if I'm an expert pool table, I learn how to do that. That angular, that little spin is so critical. And I wake up each day and say, okay, am I going to spin a lot or am I going to spin a little bit? Because here I am, I'm this node in this thing, and I can either not spin very much, just sit down and watch television, but maybe that's spinning, who knows? Or I can get up and spin and raise a bunch of cane. So I'm excited about angular topology. I'm looking forward to hearing what it's about, and we're going to go from there. Okay. If there's, let me see, I see a little something here in the chat. Good. Okay, that's fine. Uh, Anne wants to eat her lunch. She's good. Just mute your microphone, Anne, so that if you really start crunching, it won't make me hungry. Okay, no, I'm only kidding. You keep your microphone on and you make me hungry all that you want. I'm going to start, I'm going to find this book. Should be right here. Oh, I'm not going to do that. And, oh, I see what I did. Oh, that's interesting. So I'm going to take that down. I'm going to take this down. I keep talking about using a different computer, and and I have not yet been able to get that computer to work. So I'm going to figure out what's going on with it. And let's see here. There we go. Okay. And I like rotating reading. So I'll just go ahead and start so that Anne doesn't have to worry about she can continue to eat.
Good.
Then we'll turn it over to Richard, and then Anne, when you're ready, maybe you can read too. Angular topology. See, I love topology. If you guys know, have you seen the donut and the coffee cup? They're the same thing topologically. That's mind-boggling. So I'll bring those things up as we move through this chapter if it's not brought up here already. Our study so far has primarily examined the conceptual foundation of synergetics. Except for occasional reference to volume and symmetry, the emphasis has been on numbers or elements rather than on shape. It's now time to look at the rest of the picture. Fuller's appreciation of the MIT definition of mathematics, the science of structure and pattern in general, led him to ponder the appropriate tools and methods. Science is a systematic endeavor requiring exact procedures for its description of structure and pattern. A coordinate system describes the shape and location of a body in space by specifying the position of a sufficient number of that body's components. But a position can only be specified by its relationship to some other known location or coordinate system origin. In essence, mathematics functions by locating points relative to an agreed upon frame of reference, such as the mathematician can say there is a point here and a point there, and they are related by this kind of trajectory, and so on, until there is enough information to describe the entire system. Fuller points out that this information can be broken down into two aspects, shape and size. What does shape consist of? Maybe somebody else wants to read. What do you think? You want to
Yeah,
read, Richard? All right, good.
yeah, I can start. The other thing, though, just to say a little bit about shape,
Yeah.
and it kind of relates to our opening and closing sort of invitations. Um, Oftentimes we will say, how are you today? How are you feeling?
Yes.
What's going on for you? And when I got introduced to this notion of shape and the way shape can vary in terms of your location in relation to it. So in other words, looking at something from a distance, it looks like it has a smooth shape. And when you get up close, you can see some of the rugged sort of nature of the boundaries. Um, so what I started to do on a number of occasions was instead of saying, how are you feeling today? Um, or what do you want to get out of today? Not so much the get out, but what
Expectation.
what's your expectation? And so I would say that what's your shape today? Um, and or how is your shape today? And it was open-ended, so you could think of it, oh, my physical shape, is that what you mean? Or is it my emotional shape? Or is it my spiritual shape? Is it, my psychological shape? And they could then answer it in whatever way they wanted. But a lot of people would then say, well, I feel everything is really smooth and copacetic today, or I've been through a rough patch and things aren't as uh, balanced or equal. So it was really amazing to see what the difference in using a word like shape did to how you described um what you were feeling or doing at a particular time. So I want to be able to get reacquainted with this whole idea of shape. So what does shape consist of? Shape is exclusively angular, 240.55. A simple but powerful observation. It's easy to envision identical shapes of completely different scale. For example, an equilateral triangle is a precisely defined concept, yet it contains no indication of size. It might be 2 miles or 2 centimeters in edge length, but its angles must always be 60 degrees. Shape is influenced by only the angle, and an angle is an angle independent of the length of its sides. 516.02. The word triangle by itself, without further modification, does not describe a specific shape, but rather a concept, three interrelated events without specific length or angle. What does size consist of? Measurement or dimension. In synergetics, these parameters are always expressed in terms of frequency. The word is aptly applied, serving as a reminder of the role of time. Fuller dwells on the point, every real system, special case, involves time and duration. Real systems are events, and it takes time for an event to occur. He bases his objection to purely static concepts in mathematics on the fact that they are incompatible with 20th century scientific thought. Since the measures of light's relative swiftness, which is far from instantaneous, the classical concepts of instant universe and the mathematicians' instant lines have become both inadequate and invalid for inclusion in synergetics. 201.02. Since Einstein, Bucky reminds us, we can no longer think in terms of an instant universe, that is, a single frame picture, because even light has been found to have measurable speed. Every aspect of physical universe, from its smallest tetrahedron to life itself, involves the passage of time. Quite simply, in quotations, it takes time to get from here to there.
Cool. I'll read for a while. Frequency and size. He insists upon nothing more adamantly than this distinction. He insists upon, between real, experimentally demonstrable phenomena and imaginary concepts. Size relates to real, time-dependent systems, whereas shape is influenced only by angle and therefore independent of time. Is a factor in both real and conceptual systems. Angles are independent of size. Size is always special case experience. Synergetics 515.14. But how does frequency apply to size and length? Frequency connotes number, the number of times a repeating phenomenon occurs within a specified interval, ordinarily an interval of time, but Fuller extends this concept to include space. Length is measured in synergetics in terms of frequency to underline the length or underline the fact that the distance from here to there involves time and can be specified in terms of number. Number of footsteps across the room, number of heartbeats during the interval, number of water molecules in a tube, number of inches, number of photons, number of somethings. The choice of increment depends on what is being measured, but frequency, and hence size, is inescapably a function of time and number. I'm not sure I'm understanding that, but I'm hoping that I will. Fuller explains frequency as subdivisions of the whole, suggesting another advantage of the term. It provides a built-in reminder that there are no absolute or single correct unit or measurement. Rather, distance is measured relative to arbitrarily devised units. It is not a minor challenged to perceive distance this way. Our conventional units, like inches or kilometers, are such as integral part of awareness that they seem a priori elements of size. The teacher in Fuller will not let us accept such useful conventions blindly, and so he employs tools such as frequency to keep us on our toes, aware of the nature of distance. Well, I still don't get that, but we'll see if I do. Time and repetition, frequency versus continuum. Just as length cannot exist without time, there also can be no awareness without time. Time, inseparable from all other phenomena, cannot be isolated. Time is experience. Synergetics 529.01. The concept of time is inextricably tied to awareness. Appropriately, it is measured in terms of the frequency of detecting repeating events. Periods of daylight reliably alternating with darkness give us a unit we call day. Heartbeats might have defined the second, planting the awareness of that tiny increment in so long ago human beings. The predictable repetition of days growing longer and shorter with their accompanying weather changes defined as a year. To conceive of time requires repetition. However, the limits of perception prevent recognition of the periodicity in very high frequency patterns, such as light waves or repeating molecules in a toothpick. If repetition is so frequent, we perceive a continuum rather than segmented events. I think I understand that. Fuller's use of frequency to specify size draws attention to the non-existence of continuums. Here, as always, his goal is to develop a mathematical language which accurately represents reality. Shape and size are thus replaced by angle and frequency. Fuller's principle of design, covariables, summarizes by stating that two factors are present for all variation. Angle and frequency modulation exclusively define all experiences, which events altogether constitute universe. 208. Well, I have to say, I get some concepts there. They're bouncing around in my head, but there's something more to it and I'm not getting it. Are there any comments?
Yeah, normally when people talk about shapes and they define it like this, then I'm in my head are all the shapes that don't seem to fit into that definition, right? So I'm waiting to see what comes up to help reconcile that, like you have a shape of a cloud, you have the shape of the heart, the liver, and none, it doesn't have angle. So anyway, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. In short, structure and pattern in general are described completely by two parameters, angle and frequency. Pattern has a frequency, and structure has angles. Another way of saying that the differences between systems are entirely accounted for by changes in angle and length. Again, the goal of such simplification is the demystification of mathematics. Remember that Fuller's overall goal was to isolate nature's coordinate system, by which he meant that the simplest and most efficient reference system to describe the events of nature. We gradually narrow in on his solution. Okay, who wants to read?
Okay, I'll take it on. Thanks.
Okay.
Fuller of topology and vectors. Fuller has declared his scope. Synergetics consists of topology combined with vectorial geometry. 201.01. Topology, in essence, analyzes numbers of elements. Euler's law is topological, involving neither symmetry nor size. And now we must again think about vectors, for they are the key to this combination. Vectors provide an ideal tool for representing velocity, force, and other energetic phenomena. As you may recall, the concept is actually quite simple, despite its lack of popularity among high school students. Yeah. A vector is a line with both specific length and angular orientation. It's the ultimate simplification of actions or forces, presenting only the two most relevant bits of information, magnitude and direction. Mathematics defines this tool and the accompanying rules for its manipulation, just as it defines the set of real numbers and the rules of addition and multiplication. The mechanism as a whole enables us to predict the results of complex interactions of forces and bodies in motion.
Let me just pause right there.
Sure.
This is profound. And in fact, about a year ago, I got acquainted with Elon Musk's full driving car software. And they have completely abandoned, they use pictures. They have cameras outside the cars, but the cameras stopped using pictures. What they did was they realized that all these pictures out there actually represent vectors. And here he's talking about what we see right here is that there are two elements involved, is magnitude and direction. And as I studied self-driving cars and the way Tesla Auto has created this self-driving software, they take these pictures and convert them into vectors. For example, over on the left, there's this great big hunk of mass, but it's a building and it's not going anywhere. It has magnitude, but it has no direction. Over on this side, we got a big hunk of mass, but it's a Mack truck. It has mass, maybe the same size as the building, but the car doesn't worry about the building because it doesn't have direction. It worries about the truck because it has mass and direction. And Tesla self-driving converts all of these images around the car to vectors, giving them mass and direction, and that's how they drive the car. They don't care if it's a building or a truck. They just know that if it's got motion, we want to avoid it. And if it's just sitting there, we don't need to worry about it. We just don't want to run into it. So,
Right.
so this idea about having magnitude and direction, this is profound as far as I can see. So I thank you for letting me interrupt there. And let's continue. If you want to continue, you sure can.
Sorry, my line is in and out here a lot. I've been dropping out. Okay, where are we? Okay, I'll read a bit more.
Yeah, you're surveying.
Okay. Surveying classical geometry, Fuller decided that there was nothing to identify time and nature has time. So I'd like to get that in there. Vectors seem to provide the solution. I like vectors. A vector represents a real event of nature. I wondered if I couldn't draw up a geometry of vectors that would mean having the elements of experience. Okay.
Wow. Wonderful.
Do we go on to understand that further?
If you guys want to ask about it or talk about it, we can. If you want to read it again, you can, Anne.
Okay. I like this thing. I want to explore is there's nothing to identify time, like the paragraph before. And nature has time, so I'd like to get that in there.
All right.
Yeah. In fact, this seems to carry on.
And so for time, this all involves with direction, because if a thing can only move in a direction over time, if it has magnitude and it's not moving, there's no time involved with it. It's just sitting there. This is my interpretation. So direction involves time. At this point, it's here. At that point, it's there. At that point, it's there. Nature has time. Things are in motion. That's what I'm hearing. Richard, do you see anything else?
I'm just trying to with vectors and corners or vertexes, and it's like the vector is in between something.
That's right.
In between two somethings, and it has a particular angle. So that's what I'm trying to get my mind around. The And the magnitude, as I've always understood magnitude, is similar to what we were just describing around the building, that it's a lump, if you want,
Right.
but it's not in motion.
Right.
Um,
The node on the tetrahedron has some magnitude. It can be a big
yeah,
node or a
yeah,
little node.
yeah,
And the relationship between the nodes is the edge, and that's where the vector comes in, because
yeah,
that's the connection of those things.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else you got there? Thank you for those insights.
Yep, yep.
Cool.
I can see the two connecting. Thank you. Okay, back to synergetics. What is meant by a combination of topology and vectorial geometry? And how does it fit into the search for nature's coordinate system? By viewing polyhedra as vector diagrams, Fuller integrates the two subjects, vectors and topology, in a deliberate attempt to develop one comprehensive format to accommodate both the inherent shape of space and the behavior of physical phenomena. Polyhedra with vectors as edges necessarily incorporate both shape and size. Okay, passing it on.
All right. Okay, good. Whose turn? You want to go for it, Richard?
yeah. Okay.
Vector polyhedra.
Vector polyhedra. The spectrum of possible forms of polyhedra is certainly informative about the shape of space. Polyhedra are systems of symmetry made visible. Any configuration allowed by space can be demonstrated by vertexes and edges, and as noted earlier, experimentation quickly reveals that the variety of possible forms is limited by spatial constraints. Furthermore, the shape of space is fundamental to the events of nature. Fuller believed that mathematics, the science of structure and pattern, should be based on these principles. So Fuller coined the rubric angular topology to express what he saw as the principal characteristic of synergetics, integration of the static concepts of geometry with the energetic reality. These may not have been the words he used back then, but the desire for such a system dates back to Bucky's early school days, or at least that's how the story goes. Such myths evolved over time to convey the spirit of the child's inquisitive confusion through concise anecdotes. Fuller's lectures and writings incorporate a full repertoire of autobiographical moments in which the young Bucky has startlingly complete and rich realizations. The process is beautifully described by Hugh Kenner, who relieves us of the burden of asking, did that really happen, just like that one morning? In quotations, not that he deceives, he mythologizes a normal work of the mind. To embrace multitudinous perceptions, making thousands of separate statements about different things into summarizing statements. What a myth squeezes out is linear time, reducing all the fumblings and sortings of years to an illuminative instant. We can see why Bucky needs myth. The vision that possesses him eludes linearity. The myth is anecdotal. We return to the geometry lesson. The grade school teacher has put a drawing on the blackboard and said, "This is a cube." Young Bucky wonders aloud, how big is it? How much does it weigh? What is its temperature? How long does it last? The teacher says, don't be fresh, and you're not getting into the spirit of mathematics. Again, the implication is that mathematics does not deal with real things, but only with absurd constructs and arbitrary rules. It's not hard to accept the message behind the story, that something about the teacher's lesson was profoundly disturbing to the child. It seemed to Bucky that mathematics was a serious enterprise and it should limit itself to experimentally demonstrable phenomena. That meant no fooling around in the fringe area of sizeless points, infinite planes, and weightless cubes. We reconsider these early musings in the new context of angular topology to see where they led, and to recall that Fuller was later to attribute mathematics' lack of popularity to the perfectly natural discomfort people felt with those elusive concepts. Explanations ought to be in terms of tangible experience. But then, what are we to make of such claims as synergetics permits conceptual modeling of the fourth and fifth arithmetic powers, that is, fourth and fifth dimensional aggregations of points or spheres in an entirely rational coordinate system that is congruent with all the experimentally harvested data of astrophysics and molecular physics? 202.01. Under the heading Angular Topology, this statement is found too early in Fuller's synergetics to be easily understood. One might wonder if a page was left out of that particular copy, but the root of the confusion is not that easily located. With some additional background material, we can begin to understand Fuller's assertions. The word dimension has been lurking behind the scenes in this entire discussion and must now be brought out into the open.
Yeah, I have something to share about something that came up at the, just at the page, at the top of the page there. The one about math being conceptual. Can we go back up to that? I think that
Yeah,
line.
and I have a
Yeah.
comment on that as well.
Yeah, because we've spent years on this, like mathematics does not deal with real things, but
It
only
doesn't
with
do.
the constructs, and arbitrary rules, right? And there's something else they said there. Can we stay back up there?
Is it
And
here?
then, yes, it's up there. Something about there was something about people lack of popularity. Yes, so okay, let me see the line that begins. We reconsider somewhere halfway down that paragraph. We reconsider these early musings in the new context of angular topology to see where they led, and recall that Fuller was later to attribute mathematics' lack of popularity to the perfectly natural discomfort people felt with those elusive concepts. I just want to share something because it took for us to get to where we are with what we have changed out in math. It needed somebody who's from the arts, completely clueless about math most of the time, and an engineer to kind of set the curriculum. So I'll just share with you because see, I went to learn from this guy by the name of Sandy Sanderson, who was from Australia, and he got trained on this Mortensen math, which I may have brought up before. So it was through Mortensen math that we got this information. That because math is very abstract in concept, right? But young people's ability to understand abstract concepts is only at 15, 16 years old. It starts there. So just imagine we're teaching kids from the age of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and upwards, very conceptual things, which is abstract, through an abstract manner, and expect them to understand something that's completely out of their realm of learning, right? And it only picks up when they are in secondary. So I'll give you a bit of context on this one. You see, numbers are abstract. Like one, the symbols, they're symbols. The written form of numbers, they're all symbols. And symbols are abstract in concept. So we're teaching the kids from little children, little babies, what number 1 looks like, what number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and so on, what they look like, right? And so for them, adults don't know and did until today, because most math teachers are not taught this, right? So till today, the children are being taught abstracts from such an early age. So you actually need to start them off by giving them things, 1, 2, like just on and on and on, rather than giving them numbers, right? And I saw the result of, because I have a video which I can actually share with you, but I got to search for it, of a little 3-year-old, 4-year-old boy, I think he was 3 at that time, learning numbers, and you can see how confused he is with the written number. Okay, so that only that one number that he has a connection with the real world, he kept harping on that number, but the rest of it could be anything. So we actually ended up working backwards all the way to primary to undo and redo this, but we can't find any textbooks that's written in that form. Singapore math, they have elements of this Mortensen, right? But it's not fully integrated inside. And so we had to redo our math and teach the children from 2 years old. And we had to undo and reteach people how to teach math all the way up to secondary and even pre-U. So, and to the point where things that are connected conceptually, we teach them very young. If they know how to do skip counting, literally, they would know how to do multiplication, and therefore you can go to multiple digits, even while they're young. And because in volume, and we actually do teach them algebra and calculus from 4 and 5 and 6 years old. Just to give you an idea as to if you can make the numbers or the understanding of math concrete, we call it concrete. Before we get into the abstract, we go concrete, pictorial, and abstract, which is the Mortensen way of teaching it. And if you do it that way, you can literally link everything together because they are linked, right? So when we teach distance, area, and volume at primary level, we do it. In fact, we do it in kindergarten as well. Distance, area, and volume. We can teach it all at one time in half an hour without having to split it up to primary 3, primary 4, teaching them distance, and then primary 4, maybe you introduce them to area, and then only primary 5 or 6 they teach volume. So we had to redo and undo a lot of stuff. Okay, then we use Singapore math, link it to Mortensen, because Mortensen alone does not have the word like problems that is related to the real world, and it doesn't have the drills that are necessary for the exam. So we literally had to reshape math for our curriculum. And so therefore, hiring teachers for math for our school is literally impossible because none of them learn it this way. And so we had to hire a lot of engineers.
Wow.
Yeah, just to give you an idea of what he's talking about here, and maybe to give the context of what we had to redo and undo in our own school. But we never actually talk about it that way because it will scare a lot of parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just listened today to an argument. I don't know if you've heard Sabine Hassenfelder, but she's a German physicist educator who has a huge podcast, and she has very popular stuff in there. She had a whole thing today I listened to it, on intuitionist mathematics. And she says, this physicist says we're using maths entirely wrong.
Sorry, you're breaking for me, Steve.
I'm breaking up?
Steve, yes. So what did she have today?
I put it in the chat. You'll see in the chat, it says Institutionist mathematics, and I'm going to read this. Institutionist mathematics is the idea that the entire discipline of maths is a mental construct based on human thought rather than on Platonic realm of eternal truths. This is exactly what we just talked about, what Bucky just said. Math is a construct, and according to this physicist, Nicolas Gisin, if you want, I think, one of the biggest proponents of this concept is that math is based on human intuition, is the reason why quantum mechanics seems so strange. In other words, anytime you solve a problem in math where you end up with an infinite number, nobody can understand an infinite number. The brain can't handle an infinite number, and you're having students work down with all these fractions that go out to, all these decimal points. Nobody gets that. You have an object, it's a 1. You have a second object, it's a 2. And yeah, you do have relationships that can be timed. It can be timed in terms of fractions, be described in terms of fractions. But these guys, it's so much like Bucky. What he's saying is that we've got to. The reason why quantum mechanics has such weird outcomes is because of the math they're using. That's his argument. And if we got back to realistic math, quantum mechanics wouldn't be so dadgum complicated. So I put that link in there. It's very heady, and I'm not sure it'll apply, but I think a mathematics teacher could cope with it. But I think that's what Bucky's talking about. We got to come out of all these realms of probabilities and possibilities and come down to, okay, 1 + 1 is 2, and that's real, and we can handle that. The other thing I wanted to say was I've learned memory pegs, a mnemonic peg system in my brain. So when I'm trying to remember numbers, there's a German guy back in the 1800s who invented this memory peg system. So the number 1 looks like a letter T. And so for me, number 1 is a toe, a big toe. And I see this big hairy toe. Number 2 is a kneecap. And so I see a knee. So if you see somebody sitting in a chair, their legs are wrapped around the chair, it looks kind of like a 2, doesn't it? So the way I see that is like a catcher in a baseball game. The catcher has shin guards on his shins, and he's squatting down, or she is squatting down, and those legs form a number 2. Number 3 is something else. Number 4 is a flag on a golf course, and it represents a row. Number 5 is a star, a 5-pointed star representing the law. Number 6 is a shark, the J for Jaws. And so I have all these numbers related to actual letters related to actual objects. So if I want to remember a number, like a phone number, I just stack all the objects together and create a crazy picture, and the numbers fall right together because the numbers don't interrelate like the pictures do.
Yeah.
And so the pictures make it very simple. It's called mnemonic pegs. And in fact, the first book I wrote, before I wrote my 5 real estate manuals, I wrote called Get Smart. Successful memory assimilation and retention techniques. I created the acronym SMART, successful memory attention, and so and I think this has the idea of making the numbers real so they were no longer abstract. Because like you said, Anne, the number 3, what does that mean? It's a symbol. We make it up, and it has to represent something real. Well, for me, number 3 is May the belly dancer, and believe me, that's fun. But but when I go into my 10-day meditations, they don't want us to do any journaling. We can't take any pens or pencils in there. So I'm just sitting on there when I get ideas, just jamming on my memory peg system. I came out of my last 10-day sit with 45 memory pegs. So I got out of them. Then I got my pen and paper down. I started writing down all the ideas I thought of because I created pictures and assigned the picture, used the symbols from the numbers to create a picture. And all I got to do is think of the picture, and that reminds me of the numbers. So I know I make sure I get all of my 46 memory pegs down. I can go down the paper and list 1 through 46 and then say, okay, 1 was a big toe. What was that about? 2 was the catcher. What was that about? And I'm almost remembering these now, but they're just crazy pictures I make up in my head because the interrelationship of the symbols is so much more fun and so much more meaningful than the stupid number. So it's just, I think it's just what you said, Anne. So memory pegs mnemonics are pretty cool. I have a book I've written on it, and maybe if you're interested, I can show you the book. I think it's just really fun.
Okay.
Anyway, any other comments or thoughts on it?
Do you let me see if I can. I found the video. I need to get to that file. I don't know whether you'd like to watch the little child, and that's the reality of what numbers are to that little child. And then, do you want to see that?
Yes. Do you want to see it?
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, sorry about that. And I've got to search for it.
I found that there are several memory peg systems that are on the
Okay.
YouTube, and one guy's using finger puppets. So anyway,
This one is real because it's one of my colleague's son.
wonderful.
My colleague's sons, and this was in a more traditional kindergarten. Let me see, share.
Be
Share.
sure to share sound. You have to click the button share sound too, if you're not used to that.
Right. Okay. Let me find it. Screen. Share device audio, is it?
Yeah, share device audio. Yeah,
Okay,
it's on.
Yeah. And then let me locate this. Okay, because I do this for the kindergarten, and this is the one, because it's an internal thing. You see One Direction there, you're familiar with them?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to get this on the left is where the video will begin, and just watch what number one, what the numbers are to him. There's one number is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Okay.
Where's number 1? Where's number 1?
Can you hear?
This
Yes.
is number 1.
What I see?
This one, what is this?
2.
2.
This is what I see.
This is 1.
What I see.
This one?
What I see.
How about this one? What is this?
3.
3, yeah. This is 3. What is this?
4.
4, yeah. 1. 1.
What I see.
2.
What I see.
2.
2.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this, yeah? Because I have to educate parents a lot most of the time, so. Yeah, see what happened for that little boy is that the only number that has any relevance, how do I stop sharing? The only relevant number to him is 1, right? And all because his mother, which is my staff, loves One Direction and sing, and he was only 2+ at that time, right? This little boy, so he knows the name of the singers. He knows who is singing at which part of the song.
Cool.
Right? And so the other numbers have relevance. Number 1, it was 2 as a sporting representation, and so when we show it to parents, then they understand what it is that we're trying to do. So if you're doing number 1, first thing is we don't even bother with the symbol. We're looking at things that have just 1 by itself, but what the very significant ones where it'll anchor in the kids' heads, read the real stuff. So 1, if you're looking, like in this case, he loves One Direction, right? So if you're looking at 2, then we might look at maybe 2 like Chip and Dale 2, Chip and Dale 2, right? Or 2 eyes, always our eyes. But you got to make it a lot more exciting just talking to them about eyes. But we got to link the 2 for them in their heads. Then the next thing is 3. What shows up in 3s? What shows up in 4s? What shows up in 5s? So, and of course, 5s is a lot easier because you're looking at fingers and toes. But then we also got to find something way more exciting in the real world that comes in 5s in order to anchor it for them. So this is what we mean by anchoring what is real to the abstract before we even go into numbers. Then the next thing we do then is even we do pictorial. Then we show them the pictures of things in 2 until they anchor that before we even introduce the what do you call the symbol of the numerical symbols. And even when we do additions and subtractions, it's like you don't even talk about adding. We're just playing around, passing them sweets, passing them, or stuff like even making them have this yogurt tea party where they can add toppings and 2 of the raisins, and so then after that they can count what the total number of toppings look like, things like that. Before then you even may have to play around before even going to writing what plus is and 2 and 3 and all that. we would even play around with covering up, like you give a 2, and then you give a 3, and then later on you give a 2, and then you cover up the 3, and so how many do you need to make 5 sweets? You know, that kind of thing. So we have to really anchor. In fact, the one that is the most important is actually the
Oops.
equal
Richard,
sign.
is Anne
Oh,
breaking
the
up to you?
equal sign. And the students are learning. I'm breaking. Where did you get until?
I don't think
Is it
you
still
broke up when you
breaking?
moved into the second part. It's not breaking anymore. You might have too many resources up on your computer, maybe shut down some of your background stuff.
Okay. No, I don't really have. Oh yeah, I did have quite a few things, didn't I? Okay, right.
I thought it was me, so I was turning off my video on my end. So
Oh, I didn't think of that one. Is this better now?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So
Whoop.
we actually have to show them the it can be gummies or whatever, right? And then we would close it, because when you do algebra and so on, because of the way they teach the kids in primary level, because the equal sign is not properly defined for the children in math. So you see, like Bucky is so precise with the definition, right? The teaching of it in most countries all over the world is very imprecise. So when they have mathematical statements like 5 plus a box equal 15, for instance, right? So they teach students to bring the 9 over to this side, because it's plus, it's positive. You got to do a minus because you bring it over here. That has actually no mathematical meaning or concept whatsoever. You know, and it really confuses students. And then what happens is that when they do algebra, they are moving numbers all over the place, alphabets all over the place, and that's where they conceptually is not strong. And that's why earlier on the writing that says it's not popular, it just completely doesn't sit well with most people because it doesn't make sense, and that's why it's not popular. So what the equal sign means is whatever you do to the right side, you must do to the left side. If you do something to the left-hand side of the equal sign, you must do the same thing on the left side. So if you are to zeroize something and you want to minus the 9 from the 15, then on this side, the 9, you must also minus 9. Does that make sense? It's not just on, you just move numbers all over the place. So if your math is strong, you can get it. You get it, and in your head it might work that way. But the rest, 80% of people are not math inclined, and so when they move numbers around, we don't get it. We have no idea what they're talking about, you know. And you just imagine this starts at primary level, and the definition of equal sign is not defined properly at kindergarten level. The introduction of math in an abstract manner starts at the age of 2, as you saw. You see where the whole problem with math comes about? So you imagine the task that we have to do right now as we redid our own math, and how parents actually fight us on this, you know, because it didn't fit into the way they learn math. It just
Right.
Because I'm linking what I read just now in the book, Amy Edmondson's book, to what we are facing in the world because of trying to undo this. Yeah.
Right. Very cool.
Yeah.
So just to go over that, it's like they see things in 2s, let's say, and then things in 3s, and they can count them language-wise to say 3 plus 2 is 5. but you don't introduce the actual symbol of 3 and 2 and 5 until after they have a visual of putting 3 together with 2 gives you another kind of number, and the language is 5, but they haven't learned the symbol yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't even use the word plus. We don't, because
Yeah.
because naturally occurring, we don't say plus. I'll give you some extras, or you collected along the way, or you bought some more, and so we don't anchor it with words like this, like total. Like they're told here, if you see the word total in a question, it means you have to add. If you see the word difference in a question, a word question, then it's subtraction. If you don't tell them that, we actually will go into telling them that actually the addition means can be anything under the sun in the real world. And you will not find the word plus, okay, in a word problem. And until you anchor it that way from kindergarten, there is no way all the kids can really anchor the math properly the way they should.
Beautiful.
It is so tough.
Yeah.
I will tell you that the way I got through math is I started taking those symbols and identifying points. So like there was 1 point on a 1, 2 points on a 2, 3 points on a 3, 4 points on a 4, 5 points on a 5, 6 points on a 6. I actually defined points on it. So when I had math, I would just go and count up the points. I would just count up the numbers of 1, how many times 1 dot occurred on my symbols.
You made it pictorial.
I did. Right off the
Yes.
bat. That's how I do my math. Still to this day. I have on 8, there's a circle on the bottom, circle on the top. So there's 4 dots up here and 4 dots down here. So I boom, 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 boom. And I just count up the ones. That's how I do it.
Do you know that in America you have books that actually encourage children to draw at primary level? We used to buy them. Okay, so how the title is that read, draw, solve, right? Read, draw, solve. Now the problem for Asians would be every page has one mathematical problem at the top. The rest of the page is empty. Now no Asian in their right mind would
You're going to waste that much paper.
Yes. So, and especially we brought it in from the US. There is no way we can get parents to buy, especially with the conversion rate into ringgit, right? So we bought a couple of those books, and over here we have to just print them out. There is just no choice on that. Otherwise, we can't get. So but that's exactly what the students need to do. And that book, I loved it so much because it anchors what the students need to do when they are faced with a problem in words. All right. And that's what math really is. Math is nobody's going to sit down and do numbers. Math is about real things that we have to count. Yeah. Well, it's so hard to even get that anchored into the children's heads, Yeah, but I absolutely love. So we bought a lot of books from Scholastic in Borders. Whenever I go to the US, that would be the first place I would head to, and just to buy math books. And they have comic strip maths, they have fairy tale maths, things like that. It was crazy. So the kids can read the story, and there's math involved in it. The comic strip one was particularly fun because it's in a story but in pictorial form, and then the students had to follow the story and do the calculations. But it was so tough for Malaysians to do, so we had to give students who are equivalent to grade 7 or grade 6, maybe grade 5 and grade 4 word problems from the US. See, so those are the things that math in US need to anchor, but they didn't. They went into the activities, but they don't anchor it to link it for the exam. And that's why STEM is needed in US and UK and Australia. Okay, just a segue there. All right. But anyway, yeah, thank you. I just want to say there's a lot in the US that we could find. It was so much fun, but takes it to a higher level, which we couldn't find anywhere else in the world. Definitely not from UK, not Australia, and we do look. Yeah, I just haven't gone to to but yeah, Canada doesn't have that problem, yeah. Because the way your math is your education is taught is very different. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm done.
Okay, cool.
Well, this is sort of a little bit connected, but I've seen it a couple of times and just saw it earlier this evening of different ways of relating to young students, and it's a little Asian video clip of a teacher and how she greets her students every morning, and they have a little plaque on the side of the door on the wall that there's a picture of a heart, um, and that means that they want to have a hug. And there's another picture of something else. And so the student comes in, points at whatever symbol. Uh, one might be a jig, one might be sort of a high five, one might be just sort of a shake hand with the
Bump
Fist bump.
fist,
with the
fist
fist.
bump. Yeah.
And so everything that the student punches, then the teacher replicates with the student. And so they do a
Oh.
little jig, or they do a hug, or they do a handshake. And that's how the students come into class every morning,
Oh,
greeting the
that's cute.
teacher,
Wow,
and the teacher greeting them. Yeah.
that's superb.
Yeah.
Because boundaries are important, and most people don't think about boundaries and how other people are feeling, and so the culture kind of forces people. In my workshops, I used to do workshops on awareness and personal accountability, and we used to have. It was funny because when I took the seminar from the LifeSpring people or from the Landmark people, they called it a hug line, and the goal was you'd have people make eye contact for a while and then decide how they were going to hold their relationship. And the answer was that they'd stand there for a while, and the leader would say, "Okay, just make eye contact," and then after a few seconds, say vote. And one is, I'm happy to look at you. You know, two is, I'll be happy to shake hands. You know, three is, and there was numbers for everything, and four was a hug. And
Mm.
what boggled my mind was that the leaders called it a hug line, which I thought was presumptuous and obnoxious. Like the agenda was preset. I called it the vote line. You go in and you get to vote. You get to
Yeah.
decide. Do I? In fact, I think number one was stare in another direction. Number one was let's just look up and see what else is going on in the room. So you'd look away with one. Two, you'd make eye contact. You know, three, you'd shake hands. Four, you'd hug. That was it. It was called a vote line. And it was like a whole new concept for people to realize they could choose how they wanted to hold their relationship with the person across from them. And
I like that.
that's personal responsibility. That's powerful stuff,
Mm.
you know? So I love it. Great idea, Richard. I like that. I get to choose my action. Any other comments or thoughts? Okay, here we go. All right. Where did we leave off? I think I moved up to do a question here. Yeah, we were going to start with dimension. Dimension was the next thing. Everybody okay with continuing?
Yep.
Who wants to read?
Okay, I think I'll take it on. You've read, right, Steve?
Dimension right there.
Okay. Dimension. One, a measure of spatial extent. Two, magnitude, size, scope. Three, the number of factors in a mathematical team. Four, a physical property, often mass, length, time, regarded as a fundamental measure. Five, any of the least number of independent coordinates required to specify a point in space uniquely. The above is a sampling. You want to pause there?
Well, it's amazing. When we said dimension, it has all those definitions, and I bet you we could come up with several others. And that's just how vague our language is. So that just blew my mind. I'm ready to continue. Richard, do you have anything on it? Okay, he's good. Oh,
There.
The above is a sampling of what you will find in English language dictionaries under dimension. As you can see, there are a few distinct meanings, essentially falling into three categories. One, physical extent or measurement, as in what are the dimensions of this room?
Okay,
Yeah, like
and
height,
go ahead.
length, and width. Yeah.
Yeah. Number two.
Yeah. Or number two, orders of complexity in the most general sense, as in the many dimensions of an issue or problem. This meaning is as common as it is widely applicable. Three, the specifically mathematical application, the number of independent terms required to specify a point in space. Our conventional system utilizes three independent mutually perpendicular axes in space to accomplish this task. This is often the first meaning to occur to people, especially when already thinking about geometry. Space is three-dimensional. However, this assignment, treating the third category as an exclusive definition, seemed unacceptably limited to Fuller. Exposure to the ordered polyhedra of mathematics and also to organic structures and crystals found in nature makes an orientation toward perpendicularity seem quite arbitrary. Although right angles are sprinkled throughout geometric shapes, they are by no means dominant. And more often than one might expect, 90 degrees coordinates provide an awkward framework with which to describe both naturally occurring and conceptual formations. Somebody else want to take that on?
Is it my turn or is it Richard? Richard? I forgot. I totally don't remember.
Well, we'll come back to what is the
Fuller viewed Cartesian coordinates.
Oh, okay, yeah. Fuller viewed the Cartesian coordinate system with its three perpendicular axes, conventionally labeled XYZ, as a remnant of flat Earth thinking.
Wow.
Early man, finding himself on a huge flat expanse, assumed that the up and down and the back and forth were the fundamental directions of his universe. 90 degrees was the obvious natural angle with which to segment and measure space. Humankind has more and more evidence of nature's radial and spherical bias throughout history, from the discovery of the shape of planets to the behavior of radiation and cellular growth. But neither Copernicus's spherical Earth nor the vast array of biological and physical phenomena are all suggesting that the angles other than 90 degrees would provide more natural or convenient standards, succeeded in reorientating the perpendicular bias of mass. The three dimensions of mathematics, length, width, and height, became part of an unshakable convention. That space cannot accommodate a fourth perpendicular direction is just one of its many intrinsic constraints, and yet this limitation is too often seen as the only characteristic of space. While mathematicians postulate hypothetical hypercubes in their attempt to describe a spatial fourth dimension, and physicists refer only to time as the fourth dimension, Bucky preferred to call the attention to the four-dimensional tetrahedron. Time is certainly a dimension, but the physicist's progression x, y, z, and t seem not to emphasize sufficiently that time permeating all space and all experience is qualitatively unlike the other three dimensions. As we develop an awareness that the space has shape, right angles gradually seem less natural. The XYZ coordinate system often serves to obscure rather than illuminate spatial characteristics. It is a valuable tool which we can recognize as one alternative superimposed by human minds, not as a framework organic to the shape of space itself. The word dimension is used without contradiction to describe the maximally symmetrical arrangements of three lines in space. Likewise, it can be applied to time, but it's not the end of the story.
let's pause there just for a second. I was really, to me, it was illuminating, studying Einstein's theory of relativity. The idea was that space-time XYZ existed here, and the way Einstein explained it, in the next moment, that the t was just the XYZ expressed in a different position in space. And so that was how time was expressed. But I listened to Eric Weinstein, and Eric Weinstein, a physicist, talks about the fact that we just need different kinds of rulers, that we have one ruler to measure X, Y, Z, and we should have another ruler to measure T. And they're not the same, and they shouldn't be looked at the same. He points out that in most of Newton's equations, it doesn't matter whether the thing is moving forward or backward, or in other words, which direction of time. The direction of time doesn't seem to have any bearing on Newtonian physics. You can, if you know the place now, you can predict where it was, and you can predict where it's going to be in Newtonian physics. Well, the idea of different rulers is profound. And I love the idea of the tetrahedron, this 60-degree angle thing, as representing a four-dimensional universe without considering time. That's been a big thing for me. I had something else to say, but it got lost in all the words I just said.
Well,
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Yeah, this is what I've been struggling with, this image of the XYZ perpendicular, the 90 degrees,
Right.
and how you have to change the angle into 60 in order to connect the observer, let's say.
Right, exactly.
But now, even just this evening, I'm drawing the little the height, the width, the length, and what I discovered in doing that, if the point where each of them sort of takes off, that goes up to height, goes out to width, and goes out to length, and I choose to think of that point as the observer point, then I all of a sudden I found it easy to connect all four dots.
Yeah.
And what I haven't seen though is how those three 90-degree angles in a sense changed into 60 by the way I was doing it. But it was an easy way to take where the axes met each other, and treat that as the observer point, and then I can look up to the height and put a vertex there at whatever the measurement is. I can do the same thing and I extend out the width, and I can put a dot there to represent the width measurement, and I can do it with the length, and then I can take those three end dots and connect them, and you have what looks like a tetrahedron.
Yeah. Yeah. I also, he talks about how the XYZ 90-degree angle relationships was a flat earther concept. So it was Ptolemaic. Native Americans didn't think in terms of XYZ. I mean, when they built their sweat lodges, they took a willow branch and bended it over. Everything was
Right.
arcs and spheres.
Right.
The idea of anything standing straight up, trees maybe did that, but in order to make them useful, you had to bend them over. And so it's just interesting how,
Yeah, and the trees, as well, though, they probably understood that the base of the trunk is wider than the top of the
the
tree.
top of the tree.
And so what you really have is a triangle, not a straight
Yeah.
up and down kind of
Exactly.
lengths. Yeah.
And we've talked before how about when the Plains Indians built teepees, they started with a tetrahedron. They
Right.
put up their two deals for the door, sting off the back. There you had a tetrahedron. Then they put poles all around in a spherical shape in order to create a bigger
Right.
lodge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting how these Cartesian dudes came up with XYZ and got so rigid with the 90 degrees.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling because wind doesn't blow in 90 degrees. I mean, trees don't blow in 90 degrees. It doesn't go click, 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 click. You know, it goes right. It's just amazing how obviously faulty. And here was Bucky on his own, just being quite a rebel. Cool. Want to continue reading? We're about ready to go, but let's see that we can finish this page, I think, because there's a diagram on the next page.
So where's the start again on this
I
one?
don't know. Are you at as we develop an awareness, or are you at one of the above dictionary definitions? I should have marked the book.
Oh, yeah, one of the above dictionary.
Okay, good.
So one of the above dictionary definitions refers to the number of coordinates required to specify the location of a point in space. Assuming the existence of a previously specified origin, the number of coordinates happens to be 3. Does this result reinforce the exclusive use of the XYZ axes? No, for the 3 coordinates required do not have to be Cartesian. Another option is spherical coordinates, in which the location of any point is fixed by specifying 2 angles and a radial distance. Cartesian coordinates, on the other hand, describe a location as the intersection of 3 lines, originating at given distances along 3 perpendicular axes. Yeah,
The figure 6-1, which is on the next page.
right. And that's why I've got to go back and look at those again because I can see on 6-1, if I cover up the left side of the perpendicular, I can see the 3 90-degree ones. And if I put a point at the end of those 3 and treat the intersection, the beginning intersect as the observer, then I can connect them. And I don't get a regular tetrahedron, but I get the tetrahedral 6 interconnection sort of shape.
Yeah. In fact, looking at that picture, Richard, who the hell would have ever thought of doing these dotted lines? I mean, the dotted lines, this comes back to this very premise about how mathematics is so abstract. I mean, to me, seeing that little brick there with the dotted lines outlined, that's regular, but who would have thought of that? I mean, I think this spherical approach is, of course, I think that's how they do maps. That's how a sailor does maps is by using a compass and off of a radius. But anyway, that's kind of interesting.
Well, yeah, and it's like they they force the perpendiculars into shaping into a cube or a rectangular
Right.
structure.
Yeah.
Whereas what I did, in a sense, forced it into a tetrahedron.
Right.
Irregular, but nonetheless, it was still four points with 6 interconnections.
Right on. The final paragraph there reads, the spherical approach is more suited to Fuller's radical converging and diverging universe. It emphasis on angular coordinates encourages thinking in terms of angle and frequency modulation. And so that's where we'll end it today, and we'll pick it up at page 85 next at our next reading. So very good. All righty. So
Don't turn it off.
how are you feeling, Richard? And what's your takeaway?
Well, I'm feeling good. I think my big takeaway right now is this latter part of converting the 90 degree perpendiculars XYZ into a 4th observer and connecting the 4 points. And so I can get the tetrahedron in the same way that in this diagram, they created the dotted line cube. I can create a dotted line tetrahedron out of it. Not an equal edge tetrahedron, but nonetheless a tetrahedron shape. So that's my big takeaway. Anne, how are you feeling? What's your takeaway?
Okay, I normally when we go down this path of definition and things like this, being a language teacher, I'm also thinking in terms of language, right? Languaging and representation, yeah. So for like the idea of the word dimension, for instance, right? You have the one, yes, we have all the ones that's more mathematical, where it's concrete, etc. But then there's also the other one, the number two, which is on complexities, right? The complexity of an issue or a problem, then you're looking at the multiple, like many dimension, the third, fourth dimension, and things like this. And then even for us, the usage of language is very, very fluid. Okay, terms being coined and etc. And you may not even have any mathematical or scientific, what do you call, a link to it, yeah. And that would be more coming from the fact that we are energy, we are human, and the fact that the metaphysical side of who we are comes into play as well. So every time we go down the path of all the definitions, I have to that's what I have to remind myself as well. And therefore, what things look like to us is, and we make up the description of it, and some of these descriptions, they actually stay and they become like they become accepted as the norm, and it's used all over the world. So things like that's the thing I sometimes have to remind myself as well. Knowing the science, knowing the math, and at the same time knowing that we are creative beings who have a very different way of looking at life and as individuals and so on. Okay, so that's my my takeaway today. Yeah. So Steve, how do you feel and what is your takeaway? Steve, you're muted.
What I noticed is that when I did my math, I went back to the 1 has a 1 dot, the 2 has a 2 dots, the 3 has a 3. And then I just wrote it all down here, and I realized that I never saw 9 with 9 dots. I always saw 9 as 1 less than 10. And yeah, it's interesting. And I also noticed that when I had a math problem, I start with the big numbers, 7, 8, and 9. And I'd say, okay, there's 7, and I got 5. Then I'd count the 5 dots in the 5, and that would make the 12. So I was just sitting here, because you commented that I made it into symbols. I've turned it into symbols. And I was looking at that. And so that was kind of interesting how I did that to make it meaningful to me. I like to have that. So, and I also think that this mnemonics idea is really profound. And I'm going to look back at I've thought about republishing my book called Get Smart, and I'm thinking about making it a chapter in my mindfulness book, because I think that how I relate to things around me and how I remember things and how I think that that's very important. So that was cool. I love topology, and I'm not sure I'm grasping the angular topology and those first pages we read. Those were still beyond me. So, ideally, I'll go back and read those again and see if I can make any sense out of them. So, those are my takeaways and frustrations for tonight. Cool beans. I'm complete. If everybody good?
Oh, one more thing. This Wednesday, I won't be able to join in. Yeah, I'll text it in the group. Yeah, because we have a visitor from, the husband, I think, is from America. His name is Alfred McCrary, and he wrote the song and lyrics "We Are the World" for Michael Jackson, and a whole bunch of other. They're here in KL. The wife is one of the hit songs in the 90s, disco. If you hear the music, you recognize it. Be My Lover, da 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 da, something like that. It very, very recognizable even to young people today and beyond. They recognize the music. So anyway, she's here. They're doing a project with our students. So our students went through a designer program with our friend from the US, and so he connects us with all the who's who in the US and around the world, and they designed for her. And so there's a whole brand is NW, which is for Natasha Wright. So kids design, and there's going to be a fashion show on the 18th, but on the 15th night, which is the Wednesday, we have a dinner, a welcoming dinner with her. So I won't be able to join in, but it's really, I'll update y'all and maybe give you the link for the whole event and so on, so that once we have got it all in video and all, we'll send it to you. Okay. Yeah.
Really good.
So thank you. Right.
See you all next time.
Bye.
I know.
Bye-bye.